Good afternoon. My name is Maud Louise Hills. I made some videos at the beginning of this terrible journey, and I'm going to make one now, understanding a little better about what is looked for from a parent who who basically lost all their rights in court. At present, the issue the issues are more towards my daughter's rights having been breached by the District of Columbia. Now, according to the Disabilities Administration, a person with an IQ of 70 is not an incompetent person. It is a person who deserves and is legally due to receive support. Now, within this process that began in September of 2012, University Legal Services, as well as Quality Trust, sat in several meetings with DeTu Abraham of Frontline Community Services to basically not only brush me out of the way, but most importantly, to brush my daughter's rights out of the way. They used Neha Patel of the Disabilities Administration to push this through legally. Laura Nuss was the director of the Disabilities Administration at that point. And I still can't help but to think that the actions at that point were in some retaliation for me removing my daughter from a placement that my daughter said she was being physically abused in. Again, let me circle back around to state what my daughter has lost, does not understand she has lost, and what I see as a very dangerous, frightening situation that should not have occurred. As most people in the District of Columbia know, Adrian Fenty, who was mayor, decided that all out-of-state placements returned to the District of Columbia. When he did this without any consideration to the fact that the Disabilities Administration has had two populations they've not truly served well. One is the medically fragile population. The other is the autistic population. Now, due to the law that Vincent Gray penned, I remember part of it is called the Dignity of the Mentally Retarded, or ID as we call them now. Because that law was written in the way it was, they now can deny services for the autistic. And if you know what I know about DDA, they've never attempted to serve the autistic community, the Asperger's community, which I'm part of. They've never attempted to serve those populations. It would cost more money. They'd have to do too much more work, which they're not really in the mood to do. When my daughter was given a legal guardian, it did a few things. Took away her ability to make independent decisions based upon critical facts that were given to her. Took away several things. One of the very first things that the guardian did was to make sure that there was no access to my daughter's records, which would have proved, yes, she's been violent the whole time. Not just now, the entire time. So you're saying that I somehow am the antecedent for her behaviors is ridiculous. My daughter's a sexual abuse survivor, not even given a consideration of therapy through this guardian. This guardian is pretty much operating on the fact that the District of Columbia has given her and any guardian pretty much unlimited powers to do as they wish. Quality Trust, when they were actually trying to do something that looked like they were working in my daughter's behalf, questioned how my daughter was being communicated with. As I understand it, and as has been pointed out to me by some graduates of the TEACH program in North Carolina, reflective listening with someone who has autism is always the best thing. Not only that, providing facts to my daughter. When my daughter had a hearing, when she was returned back to D.C., and we sat in front of Judge Bernstein, I had spoken to Crystal and I says, okay, now here's what I think, and you will have to do what you think is the best thing to do. I don't have the finances to pay for the services that you need. The Disabilities Administration does have the money to pay for the services you need, and you will need many supportive services. If I were you, I would admit myself to receiving services from DDA, because as I told you, I am unable to pay for your services. So when we went into court, my daughter admitted herself. When someone is that incompetent due to ID, they are unable to admit themselves to receiving services because they're not going to really understand one way or the other what's going on. She did understand. Neither of us, however, knew that becoming part of DDS, which we really had no real choice in the matter. My daughter had made us both known to DDS by running away. And at some point, she's gotten much older. I'm unable to care for her properly. I'm physically unable to do it. And I'm not necessarily mentally able to do it anymore. I am, however, affected deeply by what happens to her. For example, yesterday, I went to her residence in Prince George's County. She is with Frontline Community Services. She had multiple behaviors, throwing things at the staff, spitting, kicking holes in furniture, smacking things around, because I know that behavior usually makes its way onto me. I got as fast as I possibly could, as far away from her as I possibly could. I left. I had actually taken a cab there, but it didn't turn out well yesterday. I saw what the staff was doing exactly as suggested for a person who has meltdowns, which is what she had. Let them sit down and get themselves together. My daughter had soothing music. She had her puzzles, and she was left alone, which is exactly what is suggested. Let them have time to themselves, which I understand that. So I appreciated that. I'm now going to make sure that all of my visitations are on Sundays when this staff is there. However, as I said, many of her rights have been stripped. She was once able to make decisions about where she wanted to go to a day program, where she wanted to be in a residential program, if she felt that her needs were being addressed in this residential program, or if they were not. She was able to make those decisions. She no longer is. No matter what the director of Frontline, Datu Abraham, says, or her legal guardian, Izu Ahagatu, no matter what they say, She's no longer able to make those decisions. They coyly make the decisions for her and go. Do you think this is a good idea, Crystal? I've had very, very many nightmare scenarios with Frontline, with D2 Abraham. My father was dying. They wanted to deny her from seeing him. He, in fact, threw something else up. She had to go to a birthday party of someone she didn't even know because he wanted to spite me. She almost didn't see her grandmother before she died. I had to fight really hard for those two things to happen. In the meantime, while in this placement and with this legal guardian, she's unable to have any visitors except me. Although all of her prior psychologicals have stressed the importance of her having family, community supports. Those are gone. She is not in a day program. As a matter of fact, this is a continuation of what went on with this particular provider, Frontline Services. For years, she did not go to a day program. I have watched her be stripped of a lot of her abilities where she's in a day program that they only color and do puzzles. My daughter went to Mamie D. Lee. She went to typical schools. She actually went to Whitaker School in Orangeburg, South Carolina, which is not a school for ID. I don't understand how someplace like the District of Columbia can do things as backwards as they do. But they do. Extremely backwards. If someone has autism, we're talking about a very, very different disability than ID. Unfortunately, because of the legal situation now, her services come in through ID, which is incorrect. This is not a person with ID. This is a person who, according to all of their access, is Axis 1 autism spectrum disorder. And then there's several mental health disorders. Axis 2 is ID. And in order to receive services from the Disabilities Administration, you have to exhibit some ID. I could never go. My IQ is 167. I have Asperger's. I have no ID. So for whatever supports I need, I can't expect to get them from DDS. Wouldn't happen. Because they've been able to tack on ID to her records, she is able to receive services. I understand that. That's the political game that we have to play. However, at age 66, I am terrified that I'm going to die and my daughter is going to be stuck in this very unpleasant situation. Now, the staff yesterday handled her behavior just right. I had no idea what's happening to her during the week. I do know that her looks have changed dramatically, and you can tell there's major stress going on. You've got someone in the house all day long who is used to doing things all of the time, and they have behaviors, so you deal with them. This company has attempted to say she's had no behaviors except for me. Well, that's not true, is it? She's knocking holes in walls. She's doing all kinds of things, property damage, spitting at staff, throwing things at staff, chasing people out of a van for transportation to go to the doctor. That's the daughter I know. Those are the things that they are getting now with her. They have her on buku medication. And if anybody remembers what was said when Adrian Fenty sent everyone home, Jennifer Lav from University Legal Services said that the Florida Institute for Neurological Rehabilitation was using chemical restraints. Chemical restraints. Chemical restraints is giving someone so much medication that you expect them to not have behaviors. The autistic brain works very different. I've done a lot of studying on this. And no matter what medications you give them, if they have behaviors, they will continue to have behaviors. So they're stuffing her full of all of these medications and they're making her drunk and drowsy. But eventually she wakes up and she fights everybody. So you tell me, how is this chemical restraint even helpful? I would like very much to change the dynamics of the situation with my daughter. I do not have the finances, and